this is a pattern that I did a while back for McCall's 8094. And you can see that past me did some slashing and not spreading, but shrinking of pattern pieces because I'm quite petite. I'm just kind of going off of memory, and I don't have a clear memory of this. I did some slashing and spreading here on the sleeve. These are my front pieces here. These are my back pieces. Now for my body, I have a very petite frame. I have a narrow back and a short torso, which doesn't matter on this blouse. This blouse has a peplum, and it just kind of, I didn't have an issue with the short torso. But I had lost a bunch of weight, and so silly me, I made this blouse here out of some thrift store fabric, and I just trussed it past me and cut everything out and made this blouse. And of course it doesn't fit because past me was bigger. So I took it in, and I had to take some from the back here, so from this back panel right here, and I had to pinch out some fabric. I had to then, I got sunscreen on my blouse, so it's not ideal, but I had to pinch out some fabric and take it out of this facing piece as well. And a strange thing happened. For some reason, no matter how I put on the sleeves, there's my sleeve seam, here's my underarm seam, and it doesn't match up. I tried it front to back, back to front, nothing I did worked. So that's what I've been sitting here figuring out, how to alter my pattern and make a master pattern that will fit me now, because I love this blouse. It is great for using up tiny scraps of fabric. So what I've done, this is what I got figured so far. I have taken a little bit out. It doesn't look like much, but you have to remember there's seam allowance on. So this is, I've taken out of center back to just kind of preserve that angled seam line over there. And hopefully that will be enough, but I'd rather take too little and have to, pinch out fabric than to take out too much and then have to patch in fabric. That would be worse. So we're gonna go on the side of caution and just take off a little bit off of that back facing piece. This facing piece right here is the front facing piece, and it doesn't seem to have to change. So we'll leave that as is. The front pieces, my seam lines seem to be down my sides well enough. So I'm just gonna leave them alone and just focus on changing this back piece. This main back piece is where my back is very narrow. So this is where I've taken all the extra fabric out of the fullness out. But now, so what I'm going to do on the sleeve, this seems to be the front of the sleeve, where this marking is here. It matches up with the markings on those pieces. So, in order to make that fit and the seam lines to all match up, I am going to, you can see, it's about an inch off. So what I'm going to do is steal an inch from here, from this side of the sleeve. I am going to add on an inch to the back side of the sleeve, and I think that should fix my sleeve. So yeah, that's what I'm going to try, and then I'll be cutting out my blouse and I will see if all the changes I've made have actually worked. So here you can see I have angled the line to kind of blend it into the back of the sleeve and create that extra fullness. And I've patched in a piece of tracing paper, which I'm going to cut out. And over here, you can see I have cut off that extra inch. And essentially I've taken it over here and I've added it on to the back sleeve instead. So here I got all my pattern pieces cut out and I've started to batch pin as much as I can get pinned, and then I will sit at my sewing machine and sew it all together. So I'm just gonna like pin together these back pieces here and these front pieces, so I have a front and a back. This is my button extension on the front of my blouse. This will be for my bias trim, for the Rulo loops that go around the buttons. And I'm not ready to work on the sleeve because it needs some gathering stitches and a few more steps than just sewing it together. So yeah, that's where I'm at. So I got distracted in the middle of making my blouse because I needed a sun cover, like a kimono or something to cover my back, because I had been out working on some brickwork. We were putting little brick garden beds all down the front sidewalk, and we were in the hot sun. So I burnt my back, and really bad actually, and decided that I needed to bump up a project to the front of the queue so that I can, stop burning my back all summer. And so I made this. This is the Almada seamwork kimono. For now, I've left the tie. I have a black one, but it's kind of hot in the sun, so I left the tie off of this one for now. I may decide. I have the ties made up, and I may decide at some point to put them on. But for now, this is what I have, and it covers my back where I can't reach with the sunscreen, so that I can, not burn myself. So yeah, that's what I've made, and now I'm going to sneak in some quick sewing and get back to making my blouse. Here I have a bunch of things batch pinned. I got the two front pieces, and then I have the back piece. And the reason why I haven't pinned the back to the front is I have gotten the front and back pieces when I have like a bias cut pattern. It's really easy to get mixed up between all the pieces because there's 3 pieces for the back, sometimes more, and then 2 pieces for the front. So what I've done is I've just done front pieces, back pieces. Once I get those sewn together, then pin your front pieces to your back piece, and usually I don't get anything mixed up that way. So yeah, and then I have my bias trim. I'm not doing anything in order the way the pattern has it, because by putting it out of order I can sort of stick the jobs together and do my bias trim at the same time as my front button placket. And I basically have pinned everything I can possibly pin, including my facing pieces, and I will just sit and sew that, which is what you're about to see. Then I'll pin my fronts to my back, and yeah, then we're on to the next step. So let's do our facing first. Okay, facing sewn. I'm not going to snip any of my threads because I'll do that all at the same time. Kind of stick those jobs all together again, right? Because it slows you down if you have to stop and snip all your threads and that kind of thing. Front piece. Now for the other front piece. Okay, let's do our back piece. So we're going to do 2 seams on this piece. Okay, so look at that. I got my back sewn together. This is for my Rulo loop. And you need to just make a very, very thin Rulo loop for this. We're sitting right at the machine here, and I think we can now pin our front to our back. This is the front, that's our center front, so we want that to this side, right side to right side. Yep, just like so. Snip in towards this corner there. That's like the front center fold of that button placket. And the reason you want to do that is so when you turn it, your corner is going to be nice and sharp. Kind of just poke it out a little bit. Get your scissors. It'll be a little more crisp once we take it to the ironing board. And we'll do that all in one step. We'll take it all over, iron our seams flat, and then iron our placket flat. Okay, now for our facing. What I like to do on this part is just to use my pinking shears rather than finishing those edges. You could serge it or you could zigzag it. That's the method I prefer. This edge will be protected because it's going to be the facing. This is going to be the outside bit that's facing outwards. Yeah, if it was a seam that I thought was going to get a lot of like wear and tear, like that is exposed to like, you know, washing and scrubbing and, you know, being against your body, then I would serge it. Or with very delicate fabrics, I like to do French seams also. So there, our facing is done. So now we're getting ready to do, we are doing the bodice here. Now for this, for these, because they're curved seams, I've just been, you know, using my pinking shears on these as well. So many of them are curved because of those little peplums at the bottom. You know, like it comes down here, so around the bust you have a curve, And then down here, the peplum, you have, you know, it's curves happening all over the place. So yeah, and it's kind of the same deal in the back, though you don't have to deal with the bust curves. It's just, it curves into the waist and then flares out. So yeah, I just found it was easier to just use your pinking shears and just be done with it. Just iron them out. And of course, I am kind of addicted to my pinking shears. I love using pinking shears. Now this one. For this Rulo loop, we're just going to snip off our threads. And I'm not actually going to use the pinking shears for this because this is going to be very narrow. We're just going to trim it very close to that seam line. Make sure you're trimming on the right side of the seam line, that you're trimming this raw edge off, or you're going to be very disappointed. So this is failed attempt number 1 to turn the Rulo loop. I was really struggling. What I figured out is I made my Rulo loop too narrow. What you want to do is feed the eye of the needle through and go slow. I found double gauze is really kind of like a spongy, airy material, so it's easy to put your needle through the fabric. Iron our seams flat. I have this little tailor's hem. I just find it works under these seams really well. There. So that's that. This is our front button placket extension. This is just basically so that when your blouse is buttoned, you know, like no skin is peeking through. I quite like this little, I haven't seen this detail on a lot of blouses. Like, actually this is the first blouse I've ever seen it on, and I I'm thinking of adding it to other blouse patterns that I have, just because it works so nice and it just adds that extra like little attention to detail, which I really quite appreciate in my handmade clothing. And then one last bit of ironing to do. It's time to do a little hand stitching. Here you can see I'm tacking my Rulo loop together so it won't shift as I attach it to my blouse. I will do the same thing to all the Rulo loops. Now to pin and baste my Rulo loops on. This tool is a button gauge. You can easily mark where the loops go without having to measure. I love this tool. Off camera, I pinned the button placket extension on the other side of my blouse. It's a little hard to see, but here it is pinned. Now it's time to baste all the bits and bobs in place. Here I am sewing the button extension placket on. Then I basted all my Rulo loops in place. Sleeve construction time. Here I am showing you the stitching lines and the mark we need to transfer to pull sleeves. I will be reinforcing this corner seam in a later step. Before I do that, I'll pin on my bias trim to create the channels in the top of my sleeve for the elastic. Pin the bias trim along the top edge of the second sleeve in the same way. Now to sew everything we prepped. Remember those markings we made earlier? It's time to reinforce those corners with stitches. Pivot at the marking by leaving your needle down in the fabric. Snip to the corner marking that you made, being careful not to snip through your stitches. Sew the bias trim on. I finished sewing the channel at the top of my sleeve and then used a safety pin to pull the elastic through and sewed it in place. Repeat these steps for the other sleeve. Okay, we're gonna take a moment here to talk about what's been going on with my sleeves. So I have made this blouse 3 times, a total. This is the first one that I made. This is the second one that I made. And now I'm working on this, and I've kind of struggled with the sleeves on this pattern. So the first time I made it, I can't remember exactly what happened, but you can see that the seams under their arms are lining up pretty good, like exactly bang on. But I think I had to go in and seam rip it and alter it somehow to make that happen. But that's, you know, and it turned out really, really good. I did the next one, and then look at this. I don't know if you can see it, but the seam for the sleeve underarm is all the way over here, and here it is on the bodice. It's not lining up at all. So I'm not sure what happened there, but I put it on anyway, put the sleeves on, and it works fine. It's totally wearable, and you can't even tell that that's going on. So I must have taken that into consideration. And then I changed the pattern. And I did some slashing and shrinking down of things and expanding of the seam allowance on here to try to get everything to match up. Well, I went to do this one, and it's even worse. Like, as you can see, here on the pattern is where the little reinforced stitches happen, and then the dot, and you're supposed to slash it to that dot without cutting through your stitches, and then spread it. And I believe this fits onto the back of the bodice, but when I went to do that, nothing was lining up, and yeah, just everything was really wonky. I think what I've done is turn the sleeves around backwards and just to get those underarm seams lining up. And I pinned it off camera because I had to struggle. I kept putting on front ways and this way and that way and trying to get every which way to get it to kind of line up under the arms. And this is the best I could do. Now, whatever I've done, there's not much space on the back of the shirt anymore. So, I mean, it's a little weird, but we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna sew on our sleeves and sew it together and just compare it to the other two and see. Because whatever I've done to change it, to try to fix things, it just made it steadily worse and worse and worse. So, yeah, back to square one. And what I recommend is just use the sleeve right out of the packet. Yeah, because I had a terrible time trying to alter the sleeves, and then nothing I did seemed to work. So that's what I recommend, but maybe someone out there understands how to slash and spread and change the sleeves and get what they want out of it. But I am not quite there in my sewing journey, so here we are. Back to sewing. Here I am basting my sleeves in place. Once both sleeves are sewn in place, it's time to pin our facing on. I sewed the facing on. Unfortunately, my phone malfunctioned and I lost the video footage for this. The next clip you'll see is of me sewing the bottom edges of the facing. Now to sew the other side. Trim the front corner. Be careful not to cut through your stitches. This will ensure a nice sharp corner once you turn it to the right side. Do this for both sides. Now for some understitching.
hemming time. When I first started sewing, I used to hate this step, but now I love hemming. My blouse is just about done. Using a sewing gauge, I measure 5/8 of an inch and iron up the bottom hem. The next step is to fold the raw edge of the fabric in toward the fold we just created. Time to sew the hem. I tacked my facing in place by stitching in the ditch with my sewing machine wherever there was a seam. Now it's time to sew on the buttons. This is the pattern review segment of my video. To see all 3 versions that I made, skip to the timestamp below.
So let's talk about this blouse. I will probably be making more in my future. I love this pattern, but it's not without its issues. Some of them may be because, I'm a sewist who is learning how to fit clothing as, I go along and make projects. And some of it can be because I'm also a sewist that likes to explore using different types of fabric. And sometimes that introduces some complexity into the whole process of fitting clothing. So yeah, what happened this time? Well, we kind of have to start back at the first blouse that I made. I made it with almost no alterations. I think I did make a muslin, but the sleeve pattern piece, I don't think I altered. I made it as is, right out of the pattern pack. And I believe, and it's hard to remember exactly what Past Me did with that blouse because it was quite a while ago that I made it. I believe that I put the sleeves on and then discovered there were some fit issues because I have very narrow shoulders. The sleeve was coming out very, very far, and I wanted these sleeves to cover my bra straps. So I believe what I did is I opened up my seams and shifted things around and altered it and took it in a bit. But because of that experience, I ended up with my second blouse trying to do a bit of that beforehand with the pattern piece. So I did some slashing and spreading and this and that. I don't remember exactly what Past Me has done because I've altered the sleeve pattern on this now a few times. Well, the second sleeve on the blouse, it looks perfect when I'm wearing it and everything falls exactly where I want it to. And that's the yellow blouse. That's the second one I made. The first one was the white blouse. The second I made the yellow, and everything looks perfect, but the underarm seam isn't lining up. So I went back in and I did some more alterations, and it seems like I made everything worse. With the sleeve comes very far into the center back, and that's the only way I could get everything to kind of line up properly with the underarm seams. I think I ended up turning the sleeve around backwards even. Nothing was sitting where it needed to, and I figured, well, I can live with the extra sleeve being at the back, covering my back a bit more, because that's a spot on me where I can't reach to get sunscreen on, and then I always end up burning. And I thought it might look a little weird, but it'll serve a function, so I don't mind. It's a little wonky, but I don't care. So that's what I ended up doing with this pattern. But going forward, if I make this blouse again, I think I'm going to return to the original sleeve as it is, right out of the pattern pack. I'm going to retrace it and start back at square one because I feel like I was in a better place with these sleeves in the very beginning, before I started slashing and spreading, I thought I knew what I was doing, and I tried some things and they didn't really work out. And sometimes that's how it goes, right? But some of my issues might have been fabric choice. And that's why it's really hard to diagnose exactly what's going on with these sleeves, because I tried using a double gauze for this blouse. It's not a recommended fabric, I don't believe, on the pattern envelope. So that's always a bit of a risky venture whenever you do that. But I really love double gauze. I'd worked with it before, so I knew its propensity to kind of grow as you wear it and stretch out as you work with it. And I thought I was being careful, and sometimes things didn't really line up. They kind of stretched out, but I just kind of squished it in there and made it work. And overall, it's a very comfortable blouse. I love this fabric. It's very comfortable to wear. It's kind of cozy, but cool at the same time, which is counterintuitive. But that's my experience with this fabric, and I love it. I think it's a great summer fabric, but also a really good seasonal fabric, fall or winter fabric as well, depending if you layer it with cardigans and things like that. So yeah, I will show some twirl footage in the order that I made them, of each blouse, the white one, then the yellow one, and the blue one. Thanks for watching. Happy sewing.